I heard from him
well,
on Monday, so it's only been a couple of days, but still.
okay.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah, we point of order is we have not heard from him at all this evening. And Mac, if you are listening, just give us a
Give us
a line or
sign,
something.
bro. Give us a sign.
Yeah, give us a sign, give us a line, give us something, because we don't know where you are or what you're doing. So,
we don't think he's dead or anything. It's just,
no.
Like,
it's very
just,
possible
like,
work could have wiped him out. He could be asleep on the couch.
Yeah,
well,
he
it's
might
not
be
so much work,
but also the
his
situation involving his house.
Yeah, it's his current displacement that I would attribute to why he's not here and why he's not saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's understandable. I'm sure he'll pipe in at some point, probably tomorrow.
Guys, did you do a show? Yes.
We will.
But so So in the meantime, I'm handling the whole apparatus this week, as opposed to just handling the interview portion. Anyway, joining us this week are Kevin.
Yep, I'm over here.
Petty.
Greetings and salutations, dear viewers.
And Golix.
Hello.
Right, so let's get to the news. So given the rotations and how that works, Kevin, you'll start us off, then Petty, then Golix, then me. So Kevin, why don't you get into what you've been doing during the week?
Well, as usual, my situation is not at all long or extended. It's just a simple case of me doing work at the AMC every weekend, and also, I guess the only other thing is that tomorrow I get my federal tax return in, so that's going to be fun. It's the glory of doing it as soon as you get your W-2.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's all. But yeah, that's all that's happening with me. So, Petty, you're up.
Not a whole lot super interesting for me this week. But yesterday a water main broke in the neighborhood. Luckily, we didn't have any flooding. It was one of the street water mains, and we didn't have water for a good almost 12 hours. And then
it's only 12 hours?
And then when it came back, it was all yellow and gritty and stuff because, pipe work. So we've been under a boil order for at least the next day. So, like, tomorrow, I think we still technically have to boil the water if we're going to use it for, cooking and whatnot. And then, yay. And then, I guess kind of related, Ogre's been having some computer problems. He, like, Sunday or Monday morning, he messaged me asking what a CPU temperature overload error or whatever is, and I'm like,
that's fine.
No. Yeah, CPU over temperature error, and I'm like, oh no, poor guy.
PC load letter? What the fuck does that mean?
Okay, most of our viewers aren't old enough for that one, Adam.
I know. But they should still watch Office Space.
Valid, but also... but yeah, so... I'm helping him... First, he went over to Naka's to try and get it, cleaned out and the cooler reseated, and that has not helped. So currently he's trying to order at least a new cooler for the interim, and then he's going to see about upgrading his computer, because he was going to do that anyway for the new Final Fantasy XIV expansion. So hopefully he can get that stuff taken care of. I've already given him a list of parts and whatnot. So it's just a matter of him procuring and putting together, or having Naka put together, is probably the more obvious that's going to go on there. So, Yeah, other than that, not a whole lot other than, hey, having tech support's awesome.
Good way of putting it.
Gulix, you next.
Pretty uneventful week so far for me. My sister visited over the long weekend, so that was nice. We got to play some board games with her and her boyfriend. And oh right, I forgot this for Fragments, but I think it was Splatfest this past weekend too. It wasn't a very exciting one.
Mm.
It's what day of the week? What day of the weekend is your favorite? Is not something I have strong feelings about.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, the Splatoon 2 what's the name? DLC, the actual part with a bunch of gameplay stuff comes out, I think, tomorrow, so that'll be nice.
Oh yeah, the Wave 2.
And
Is like
yeah.
Wave 2 or whatever.
Yeah, the one with the actual side gameplay mode.
Mm.
So that'll be interesting. And other than that, I don't really have a whole lot, I don't think.
All right.
So, next, I guess.
That'd be me. Like, not used to this ordering on MSP, but we must persevere. Like, well, let's see. I suppose we should try to give a picture of where Mac is, at least where what he told us last. That is that they've they're
They basically,
currently
they basically completely torn his house apart because of multiple water main breaks around his house, and he was
when I did hear from him on Monday, he said something to the effect of that they're taking their sweet time, but also that some of the black stuff has started to develop fuzz. So
that could be the black mold. So
yeah. So basically, his house is completely out of use, and he's been in a backup living scenario, as it were, for the most part. And basically, that's the last we heard from him. So, I mean, at this point, he still might be in that backup situation. What did he say? Where he was on Monday?
I believe they have put him in another
model
unit in the same building.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that's basically the situation with Mac, and watch this space, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
At this point,
I mean,
that's all we can say.
Yep. I'm like until Mac updates us, this is all we got.
Yep.
Like,
so stand by for news.
Yeah. So getting back to me, let's see. I had another doctor's visit last week. Like, blood pressure's elevated again. I don't know what's going on there. I'm like,
always fun.
Yeah, it's like, the doc asks what's going on there. I'm like, don't know. It's like I hadn't had caffeine in weeks. I wanted to make sure it wasn't that. So I'm like, it could be stress. It could be. I'm leaning towards anxiety right now because, my brother's maelstrom of problems are coming to a head.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
Because in mid-March, that's when he has to move. Like, and that's also coinciding with spring break. So, yeah, I'm like, don't laugh too much. That can.
That was not a hard laugh. That was a like a sarcastic laugh.
Right. But point is, like, he wants to have the kids up here the entire week.
Oh boy.
We'll see how that fucking goes. Because I'm like, I've got, commitments to this thing and my show. That I'm not scrapping because of him. Like, so, but that aside, he was up here with his kids for the holiday weekend, which is why Fragments review session happened on Monday this week. I'm like, he is going to be up here for the weekends a lot more, but we're talking, in between the like either Friday or Saturday to Sunday. Like, it's not something that should impact Fragments or regular recording times. At least, if it's a normal weekend. Holiday weekends is another story. Like, and right now we're doing some spring cleaning up here. There's a few rooms around this place that need to be cleared out and rearranged. And we did a fair amount of that this past week. We got to do more this Saturday, potentially the Saturday afterwards. Don't know. This is what happens when you have a whole bunch of stuff. Right now the next task is we got to go through a whole bunch of stuff to see what gets kept and what gets thrown out, what gets moved to storage off site. Fun times. Like, let's see. Introduced my oldest nephew to a proper Sonic title. Like, he's a big fan of Sonic, but he doesn't get to play the games regularly. Like, fortunately, he also doesn't really know how to work a controller. Like, it's not from a lack of want. Just he doesn't have access to a game system. He has access to phone. Like, I said this on Fragments. I think next time, if we have the time, because once again, I have chores to do this weekend. I'll load up Sonic 2 and he can play Tails. So, he can play
in Little
in
Brother
a more
mode.
controlled environment. Anyway, so yeah, I think that is my news for the week. And given that we've all given the news that we can give at this point in time, we shift over to the interview portion of the broadcast. Joining us this week is You Can Beat Video Games.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Right. So why don't we start off by telling the people out there what your channel is all about?
So I have a YouTube channel where I start out we're doing retro video games, right? And I start out each video with like a short history about the game, tell a little bit about how it was made, a little bit about why it's interesting, and then we go right into a deep dive of the gameplay. And I cover everything from beginning to end. I show practical strategies. I show some more off the wall type ones, but I want anybody that watches the video to have a takeaway where they could go play the game themselves and hopefully be successful with it. So that's the goal of the channel. It's for you to be able to beat video games. That's what we're all about.
Okay. I'm like, so I suppose the first question that comes to mind is why? Why did you set to go out to make these very in-depth guides about what are very old games at this point?
To be completely honest with you, I lost my job during the pandemic. I was laid off and I started playing a lot of video games because I was just hanging out and I had time to kill. I thought my job was going to come back probably any time now, right? I'm just I'm just going to hang out here. My job will come back and it'll be fine. And well, long story short, my job never did come back. And in the meantime, I had played a lot of games, but I noticed that if you go to YouTube, there was like not a lot of guides on these older games that were giving me the information that I wanted from it. Like I wanted to know some general strategy type things. I wanted to have an idea of what should I be thinking about while I'm playing this game that will make it easier for me and make it more approachable. And while you can sometimes just find like a playthrough of a game, finding like more in-depth information was actually not as accessible as you would think it would be in a modern time. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I
You
mean,
can
I
read
think it would
about the
depend
games
on
a
the.
lot too, right? You can
Yeah.
read a lot of information, but actually seeing someone demonstrate it is a whole different thing.
Well, and I think it would depend on the game as well, because um, given what I've seen on your channel, you do span quite a wide range of titles here. For example, your latest game that you're covering is Final Fantasy 4/Final Fantasy 2, which is definitely a game that has been covered a lot. Because Final Fantasy 4 has seen a lot of re-releases, for example. I mean, it just got one a couple of years back. So, there's a
Yes.
lot of guides out there. There's a lot of material on Final Fantasy 4. But on the other hand, your second to latest video is Snow Brothers, which is a game that you'd be hard pressed for anybody to talk about. And that is the kind of game that really does need this kind of love and attention. Because, as you noted, there's not a lot of material on something like that.
Definitely. Yeah, the games like Snow Brothers are more of that's like a personal project for me. I would like to get guides out there for games that I just think need guides to be made because there's just a dearth of information. There's nothing to find. The more popular games are the more popular videos for me, and a lot of times I'm able to find different things I think a lot of people haven't seen. One of my more popular videos is on one that you would like Super Mario Brothers 3, and you'd be like, okay, well, what would I not know about Super Mario Brothers 3? And believe it or not, there's all kind of crazy stuff that would be very surprising that I think if you saw the video. It surprised me too, and it's a game that I thought I knew everything about before I started researching it in like greater depth. And the deeper layers, there's just so much there.
Like, can you give an example?
Oh, I mean, there's a multitude of examples. One of the craziest things is just right hidden in the very beginning of the game. The programmers coded in have you played Super Mario Brothers 3 in the 2-player mode, where if you can summon the Mario Brothers minigame and you play like battle mode, right? Well, the programmers hid that part just like in the upper left corner of the map. So if you can kind of get out of the map and walk into the upper left corner, you can find that minigame in the single player mode. And then if you die as Mario, you become Luigi for the rest of the game. Super weird, like little things like that just you would never know about because you have to almost data mine the game to be able to find this stuff.
And how do you find these things, these relics that have been long forgotten or undiscovered?
I mean, I look into a lot of sources. The internet, of course, has a ton of things, but if you take the time to like translate Japanese websites, I use the internet time machine a lot to find like pieces of the internet that are gone. So things like that, you can find some real deep dive stuff.
I mean, that makes sense. Like, now, is this your full-time profession now?
It is. Yeah, I'm doing You Could Be video games 7 days a week, all the time. I was actually working on it while we were getting ready for this podcast. So I'm sitting here creating graphics for my next video.
Which I assume is the next part of Final Fantasy II. 4.
It is, yeah. Yeah, actually, yeah, no, it's like so confusing the way they did the numbers for this. Of course, you know the
I mean,
story behind Final Fantasy, right? Like they skipped 2 of them whenever they were releasing the games in North America. So we got the first one, and then by the time we got the first game, they already had 1, 2, and 3 in Japan. So the Super Nintendo is coming out and they had a decision to make. They're like, so do we take the time to translate these games that maybe aren't as good as the first one and aren't going to look as good because of how much they've aged in like the interim amount of time? Or should we just focus all of our attention on getting this new one that we're working on for the Super Nintendo translated? And that's what they did. But they thought that everybody would be confused if they called it Final Fantasy IV when we only had 1 over here in North America. So they're just changed the numbering.
Because awareness of overseas video game industry was not high.
It was definitely low for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it was maybe a decade later before I really understood what had happened there. I was in high school or whatever. I'm like, oh, wow, he missed 2 of these games.
I mean, it really made perfect sense in the US until they released Final Fantasy VII, and everybody was like, wait, but what the heck happened to the other 3?
Yeah, and then they finally did it on the PlayStation. They did the same thing with the Dragon Quest games as well. They skipped a couple of those on Super Nintendo, and then in the PlayStation era, they decided to restore the numbering.
Well, Dragon Quest, technically never futzed with the numbering because we got the first 4 Dragon Quest games on the NES. The Super NES games that we never got, reportedly due to just how big those games were and how hard it was to fit those onto North American carts.
Yeah, we lost 5 and 6. I don't know if I believe that story that they couldn't have fitted on a North American cartridge. I'm sure that they could have done it. They had some pretty big games by the end, like Super Mario RPG was pretty massive. But I think the translation aspect of it was going to be a lot of work.
I mean, that's the main thing they can't fit, if anything. It is that Japanese text just takes up significantly less space.
Yeah,
that's why speedrunners play games in Japanese a lot of the time, because the actual text display takes less time.
Anything to get an edge and second.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean, you're saving frames there, right? So you kind of have to.
Yeah. Now, do you take the approaches that speedrunners do in their runs into your guides?
I absolutely watch speedruns and try to see what I can learn from them. Some of the things that they do are not practical. Like,
right.
Like you would never do this in real life. It just is to be able to accomplish some of the feats that they do in a speed run, you would have to just practice for hundreds of hours the same trick to accomplish very little in terms of being able to finish the game. So I'm looking for things though that I can use where sometimes what they do just makes a lot of sense and you're like, oh, there is practical value to what they did here. And sometimes they do really interesting tricks, and I do like to show some of those in the videos, just so people can see them, and less about this is something that you might be able to do if you want to really try to do it, but it's not I'll show a more practical way to do the same thing.
Right. Now, curiously, I did watch one video that did tackle the speedrun scene, and that was Duck Hunt.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Well, I actually received a snail mail letter from the guy who was the speed run leader in a lot of categories on Duck Hunt. And actually, this guy, his name's Carter, and he lives in Canada. And he's a teenage kid, so he did not grow up with these games. He got them in the secondhand way, and I guess he got his parents to buy him a CRT TV so that he can compete in speed runs and all this stuff. But he holds the record in probably 75 to 80% of all NES Zapper games. So like this guy is really good, and he said that he wanted to bring to my attention that there are some things about Duck Hunt that are interesting, and one of the things was something that I did not know is that if you finish 100 levels on single player, you reach a kill screen, and the game comes to an end.
Yeah, that is how a lot of those endless games ended up working out, just because
Yes.
you've gone beyond that 1 megabyte limit.
Yeah, and Duck Hunt's a very feasible one because a lot of the games require you to hit like 256 levels or 255 because of the way that like bits work. But Duck Hunt used some kind of the way they did the numbering and the programming. They used a shortcut so that it would only have 2 decimal places because they didn't really ever anticipate anyone getting to level 100 or higher. So they just kind of shortcutted it. They said that this level counter only ever needs to have 2 decimal places. In a lot of the ways, like people were worried about Y2K. If you remember that back in the year 2000, people were concerned that computers were just using 2 numbers for the date for the year because they just kind of assumed 1990, like 19 would be the first 2 numbers. So Duck Hunt works in a lot of similar way, except that you can like really, you can Y2K Duck Hunt by like getting to level 100 and like really weird stuff starts to happen. Like the you'll see multiple ducks flying all over the screen, like they flash in and out and all kind of weird things happen.
And is there another game that you can tackle in that kind of fashion, or is Duck Hunt just kind of the lone exception here in terms of like light gun games you can beat?
I'm sure there's probably a couple other, I mean, there's other games that utilize the light gun game. The light gun you could beat, like The Adventures of Bayou Billy or The Lone Ranger are very good games that utilize the light gun, but you're not required to use them. And maybe there's a couple other ones where you could finish the game, but my interest in covering those was a little bit less compared to Duck Hunt, which is this classic, and I think a lot of people have they feel like they have a good understanding of Duck Hunt, and like I learned a lot about Duck Hunt that I didn't know, and there was more to it than I thought.
I mean, yeah, once you're getting into the really advanced stuff, then there's a whole another universe usually. I mean, when Tetris for the NES got beaten just a couple months back, just learning all the stuff that goes into doing the perfect Tetris run is quite insane.
I mean, I thought it was pretty crazy when they had the AI figure out how to beat Tetris, let alone the kid that actually did it. And did you see the way that he does it by like tapping the controller underneath? That's wild.
And apparently that's not the way that most high-level Tetris players on the NES do it.
Well, there's a previous technique before that was popular where you're just kind of like, you're just mashing with your thumb on top. Right. You're trying to go really fast. The way that Tetris works, for people that don't know, whenever you start moving a piece in Tetris from left to right, it's a little bit slower for the first move or two. And if you want to get that piece clear over to like the far right or the far left of the screen, whenever it's going like hyper crazy fast at like level 25 or 30 or whatever, you need to rapidly tap the direction to get it to move that quickly. It's just the only way to do it. And so
eventually it does go so fast that you literally can't get it to the side of the screen by the time it normally would go down.
Yeah, so I guess that these people figured out these techniques to be able to move it faster than the fastest ways possible to be able to tap it. And so they called it hyper tapping before, but I think that the kid that did it has an even more advanced technique that he's using that's like, I think, getting past that. They call it like, I think they call it DAS, DAS or something like that, which is the thing where the piece moves slower for the first couple moves. And you're overcoming that is what you're trying to do. It's almost like the pieces have friction and you need to like get it past the friction so they can move smoothly.
Yeah, and the thing I remember there is like Apparently that technique doesn't use like a glove, whereas the previous one did. Like,
Yeah, and it seems like it's more. It seems like this technique is more useful, like just for tournaments and things in general, and that's why this kid was so good though, because I don't think he ever really learned the other technique. So people that want to learn this one have to like relearn everything, and where this kid was starting with like the best technique and just focusing all of his practice on that, and just so leaps and bounds ahead of a lot of other people, and he's just beating people in tournaments that were the old guard of Tetris now. So yeah, I mean that's the way games are going though. I mean the new guard will replace the old guard eventually. That's just how it happens.
to a point, like good example on that front is the Super Mario Brothers 1 speedrunning community. Like, the speedrunning is so finely tuned that the ability to get a new record, I won't say doesn't exist, but it's very minute.
Yeah, those guys
It's
are frames off of the human limit now. The only frames
Yeah.
that exist are on the final level now, because there's no frame rules there. If you understand how
Right.
that all works, right? Like you can only the best time that's humanly possible on all of the levels up to the final one is like less about frames, because there's like breaks where you can't get a better time. The game just like kind of waits and to load up the next level until the next frame roll is reached. They describe it as being like a bus leaving the station, right? Like the bus only leaves every 8 frames, and so if you get there right as the bus leaves, that's fine. But if you get there 1 frame late, you have to wait until the next bus gets there, whether you like it or not. But the last level doesn't work that way. As soon as you hit the hammer, the timer stops, so you can save a frame or two there. And there's all kind of crazy tricks you can do in the last level that are just like ridiculous if you want to save a frame. Like just what you do at the very beginning of the level, there's like called like a fast start that you can do, and even that is difficult. Like it saves like 1 frame.
Right. But, the ultimate point here is, that's a game where the theoretical limits have about been reached.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Unless somebody figures out a new trick, which is
Right.
possible.
Yeah.
And it's not like people figured out new tricks up until this point, like lots of new tricks to get them this far. So, I mean, I guess that there could be something, but it's unlikely. Like all the different things that you can do, like wrong warping into vines and those kind of things, are just there's not too many other places for you to implement a new strategy. Like, where would you save the frames? The game's not that long.
No,
It's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to try to innovate in a like all 32 level run or something like that, maybe there's something there.
Possibly, but
Even that though is pretty close.
agreed. And that's not even getting into the TAS world. But
Yeah. Yeah, well people use the tool assisted runs to like figure out what the human limits are, and I think that helps speedrunners immensely. I mean, you need someone to figure out the TAS first so that you know what it could look like.
right.
They're always working
Anyway.
hand in hand with those guys.
Indeed. Anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
so
that's outside the scope of what I do for the most part, but I do learn a lot from watching the speed runs and like seeing what those guys are doing. But what I'm doing is trying to help people learn how to finish a game that maybe they never could. My very first video was for the Ninja Turtles on the NES, which just a lot of people feel like is impossible. And I mean, that's a game that when I was in college, I kind of figured out how to beat, and I had a lot of good techniques that if you use them, you can probably beat that game, even though it seems extremely difficult. But if you know what you're doing, it can be done. And so I didn't find a lot of videos that were showing any of this stuff, and so that's kind of how I started the channel. I was like, well, I'm just going to do the video about this TMNT game and get that up there because I just think people don't know how to do it. And it's one of my most viewed videos. It's one of my roughest ones because I was just getting started and kind of figuring out what I was doing. But the information I think is very good. Like if you ever want to conquer that game, the information in that video will get you there. Although, I mean, I think that what I do now is a lot more in depth, and I spend a lot more time per game now. I mean, I'm spending like sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks trying to find everything I can about something and just really immerse myself in the game while I'm learning about it.
Well, also, I'd imagine the time investments vary depending on the game.
No, definitely. Yeah, longer games for sure are going to take me a lot longer time.
Yeah, like one of your more recent videos that we haven't mentioned yet is Aladdin for the Genesis, which...
Oh, yeah. And that game's hard.
Yeah, it is. I'm like...
And made harder by the level design and not always being super clear about where you can and can't go.
Yeah. I'm like, I'll be honest, I've never been a big fan of Genesis Aladdin, mainly because I don't think Virgin Games could do level design worth a shit. Like, it's not just Aladdin, but Lion King, Jungle Book. I think they all suffer from the exact same thing, and that was intentional. They wanted to keep people from being able to beat a game on a rental.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's not even a question. That was like a mandate that they were putting down from the top. Like, this game should not be easy enough that people could finish it. It should should get to level 3 and just hit the wall.
Yeah.
When I was little, I had the Super Nintendo version of Aladdin and envied the Genesis version because you got to have a sword in that one.
Oh, you do.
But in retrospect, the Capcom one had a better level design.
Well, yeah. It's just
because Capcom.
It's also Aladdin on the Genesis looks better because very famously it had the Disney animation built into it. A first for the genre.
Yeah, Disney opened up their animation studios and let them use the actual animation assets to create the game. And Capcom didn't have a lot of that stuff when they were starting theirs. I think they did let them have it eventually when they were making their games. So they do kind of look similar, but the characters on the Genesis are larger and they have more frames of animation, or at least it seems like they do. They more the animation is cleaner looking.
Yeah, I'm like, there's a whole technique that went into the Aladdin game that I've like Cinemagic or something like that.
Yeah, it's something like that. They have a name for it. It's like branded. They may even trademarked it.
Yeah. That Capcom just didn't have. Like, anyway, so do you play the games on real hardware?
Oh yeah. Now I do use emulators to practice a lot of the time, but I feel like if I cannot execute it on an actual hardware, then then we're not doing it. I need to be able to execute it on actual hardware.
Okay. Like, and
that's
I'm
very
guessing
important to me that's like possible. I'm trying to create a guide so that if someone wanted to sit down on an actual Nintendo or Super Nintendo, fire up a cartridge and play the game, that these tips could help you get there. But yeah, emulators are very useful for trying to figure out how to get past some of the most difficult parts. You can just kind of zero in on those sections and replay them over and over and over and over again until you figure out what works. So that's something that I do use for research and things like that. Also to do some of the harder tricks, like just to keep reloading them until you can get them to work. You need just so much practice. You can save a lot of time using emulators to practice and not have to play level 1 over again every time you want to get to level 5.
Does that come up in the comments?
I'm sure it does, there's so much going on in the comments that I can't keep up with them all.
I mean, is your community positive about what you've been doing?
It's surprisingly positive. A lot of times I feel like sometimes you think about the internet in general, and you're like, well, the internet in general is like a cesspool. But no, the fans of my videos have been overwhelmingly positive, and maybe it's just the positive attitude of the channel kind of fosters that in some way. But yeah, I'd say just a lot more positive than you might expect on the internet.
That's always good. Because, yeah. I think we're all aware of how negativity permeates the internet, and not just necessarily in the community. Because I guess another video to highlight, Fester's Quest. You have a guide for that game.
Yes.
And if in case you're not into the scene, Fester's Quest is one of those games that's one of the laughing stocks of the NES library. It was featured on an episode of AVGN, and
an early one.
Right.
Yes.
And it regularly hits, bad NES game lists and so on and so forth. It's basically a game that doesn't get a lot of, if any, respect. And
when they talk about bad licensed games, this is the kind of thing they're talking about.
Right. And yet you put together a guide for it that provided a countering narrative to that opinion.
The Fester's Quest guide actually pretty popular. Fester's Quest is a flawed game. Don't get me wrong about that. There are numerous things about that game that if I was going to make it today, I would just not make it this way. And also, if the marketing behind the game was like, this game is impossible. You'll never beat Fester's Quest. So I kind of wonder if that was some of the philosophy that they had going when they were trying to make the game. They're like, this game is going to be difficult. It also has 3D mazes in it, which are kind of hard to realize on NES hardware. So yeah, number of flaws, the way the gun works, but there are a lot of redeeming features out of the game too. It's actually kind of an interesting world if you can get into it. And there's just no guides for this game that were out there that I found. So this one's actually pretty popular. A lot of people want to find their way to the end of Fester's Quest, and it's not easy to do without some assistance. Although there are some very broken tricks you can use that just ways to just beat bosses by pressing a single button. I show multiple strategies, so if you don't want to use the cheats to beat the game, like if you're trying to beat it in a more traditional sense, if there's a cheaty way of doing it, so we'll show one way of doing it that way, and then try to show a more traditional path as well. One's more satisfying. Sometimes you just if you could press a single button and win, you're like, okay, well that was cool. Maybe I wanted to actually play this game though. What would that be like?
Right.
Yeah.
Fester's Quest is a weird game in general because, somebody went out there and licensed not just an Addams Family game, but they said, we're going to make the main character Uncle Fester, and we're going to call it Fester's Quest. We're not calling it Addams Family Fester's Quest. We're just calling it Fester's Quest. Oh.
Yeah, it's confusing. As the guy that worked at Sunsoft, it's one of their, like a pet project of one of the programmers, and I think they didn't think that they'd be able to get the license, and they kind of looked into it, and they're like, no, the Addams Family license is extremely inexpensive because they hadn't done anything with it since 1955 or whatever. And I'm exaggerating. I'm sure it was later than that. But
wasn't this relatively close to when they were doing movies?
Movies came out later.
Yeah, relatively, but Fester's Quest came out in 1989, and the first movie came out in 1991, and Ocean released a game based off the movie on a bevy of platforms at that time. Like,
I would
I know
argue that
because
Tetris Quest is better than that.
mm,
The one for Super Nintendo is okay, but the controls are slippery. That's for sure.
yeah, I'm like, believe it or not, that's one of the better Ocean games. Like,
It is.
yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
no doubt.
LJN and Acclaim get a lot of flack, deservedly so. Ocean is right up there in the bad license game Hall of Fame. Like,
I mean, LJN didn't really make anything. They're just like getting licenses and then trying to find the cheapest
I
way
mean,
to make the game after we already spent all the money on the license.
Acclaim was very much the same way. Like, you know,
Yeah.
but they're still the producers of the games. So they're the ones who dictated how cheap and crummy. Like, it's also a thing we see on the other side of the pond with Bandai and their atrocities done under Tosei. So
Yeah, every
I
once
don't
in a
think
while,
it-
somebody would make a good game for LJN, like the Spider-Man game for Super Nintendo is all right.
like the Jaws game is fairly
Jaws is
misunderstood.
okay.
It's like I got a friend who will swear by that. I don't agree with her, but you know,
It's a weird one though when you start thinking about it. So someone comes over to your desk and it's like, "All right, I got your assignment. I need you to make the video game on the 8-bit Nintendo for Jaws. What's that going to look like?"
Brenda, have you been
I-
hitting the scotch at work again?
We got the license for Jaws, so it's your job to make the game. And you're like, "Oh man."
and you can, and unlike a lot of licensed games, you can't just make it a platformer.
Hmm.
No,
Yeah.
you really can't. You could make it like an all swimming game, but that sounds pretty bad. Especially since in the movie they were on the boat most of the time. I mean, would you be going swimming with Jaws? That's insane.
Granted, sticking close to movies back in the 80s was not a prerequisite at
No,
all,
for sure.
ever.
It's funny that they stayed close to the movie at all, to be honest with you. Jaws, and have you played the Jaws game? It's kind of an RPG.
Yeah, like I played it as a kid. I didn't get very far, and it confused me because, you know, there weren't a lot of RPGs at the time.
It's a very small RPG too. So when you think of an RPG like a Final Fantasy, you're like, well, I'm going to save the game. I'm going to play this for a couple weeks. Jaws is not like that. You got to play Jaws in one shot, but you kind of sail around looking for jellyfish and like other fish things to fight. And eventually you become more powerful. You like level up enough that if you meet Jaws, you can actually kill Jaws. Jaws has like a lot of hit points, and all of the action zones or whatever have a limited amount of time. So whenever you meet up with Jaws, if you're not like leveled up enough, you won't be able to deal enough damage to Jaws to be able to get out of there and like have him die. And when you kill him, you don't win the game. You go to this first person view where Jaws pops out of the ocean, and you have to hit him with the mast of the ship.
Like this
Like-
is sounding more akin to Jaws: The Revenge.
Yeah, I was like, they did kill Jaws like that at one point, but yeah, no, you don't get like a gun to shoot Jaws at the end. That would have been more appropriate.
Yeah, like look, if that Jaws was controlled by voodoo as well, I wouldn't be surprised. That's a real thing in the novelization, by the way.
Oh, I believe it. Peter Benchley. Well, it wasn't a great white in the novel either, right? It's a bull shark, which kind of makes more sense.
Yeah.
Just a great white looked better on
No,
film.
I'm talking about the novelization of Jaws: The Revenge. They actually say that the fish is controlled by voodoo.
Oh, okay. People that wrote a book of the movie.
Yes. They
I
actually
love
try
that.
to explain why Jaws is targeting these people. They tried to give a motivation to a merciless eating machine. You know, it's like when people understand It's a shark. It eats people. That's all you need.
I mean, I remember when I was in school, we get those like Scholastic news flyers about like books you can buy, right? And you can get like the latest Goosebumps and whatnot. But they would always have these like novelizations of movies, and you'd be like, why would you even make a book out of Hook? Right? Like what is the novelization gonna add that I can't get out of the movie? I mean, like you're gonna dig deeper into like Rufio's character.
I remember having the novelization of Home Alone.
Also,
You had the
novelizations
oh,
and
man.
junior novelizations are completely different things.
Yeah, this was the novelization of Home Alone, and the answer there was a swearing.
Oh, there was swearing in it?
No, that's what I'm
that would've
saying.
made it interesting.
Yeah, it's like no, they took it out. Like I also had a couple of the Worlds of Power NES novelizations.
Those are poorly written, but I'm kind of a sucker for those.
Oh,
They're fun.
I remember having the Castlevania 2 one, and even as a kid, I hated it because it's like it didn't resemble the game at all. And
That's another one where like, okay, here's your job. You got to write a book about Mega Man 2. This is your assignment. I need a full novel, 120 pages, and I need it by like Wednesday.
and also keep in mind, we don't know the actual story of Mega Man 2 at this point. Because
I needed this by yesterday. Good luck.
It's like
play this Nintendo game and like write me a book.
like have you ever read the manual to the original Mega Man?
Oh yeah. Oh, that's
they kind of made up their own stuff somewhat.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, I'm still waiting for Mega Man to go to Monsteropolis. When's that happening?
I can't imagine being that guy writing the World of Power book too, and he's like, "All right, so I got to play this Mega Man game," and like loads it up and like goes to Quick Man level or whatever and just gets destroyed. And I was like, "Oh, great! How much am I getting paid for this assignment?"
Yeah, it still amazes me that the Blaster Master one of those became canon. Like that actually serves as the basis prequel to Blaster Master blasting again on the PlayStation.
The Blaster Master one's all right.
That's where that shit came from?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they use it in Blaster Master Zero as well. A lot of those characters are in there.
I think we may have harmed Petty
a little bit.
This knowledge.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Fuck my life.
And the thing is, that's still better than Blaster Master 2.
Yeah.
I thought mentioning Blaster Master 2 got you drawn and quartered.
I'm like, ugh. Anyway, that does bring a question to mind. Are there games that are so legitimately terrible that you won't do a guide for them? Like, say, the Curious Case of Mr.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yeah, I think about doing that one every now and again because like that game is all right. People throw out like, yeah, you should do Cheetah Men or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do Cheetah Men. So like it's gotta be better than Cheetah Men. Something something that like I just don't, it will like drive me insane. Like there's a couple games like that I'm not sure if I would want to cover. Like something that uses the same piece of music for the entire thing. Like I like Bubble Bobble. Have you ever played Bubble Bobble?
Yes.
It's a fun game, but like if I'm gonna do a video of it, there's like 132 levels of Bubble Bobble, and it's like the same music over and over again. And I'm gonna have to edit that and put it together and probably watch it like 25 times. And I'm just gonna never stop singing Bubble Bobble. I just don't know if I can do that.
And that's how everything ends.
I would like to cover that game. I just don't know if my brain can handle it.
No, I get it because sometimes when I talk about classic games on my other program, I bring this up. It's like I do think that the reason why some of the most iconic music pieces in video games became that way is just because like Mario has more than one theme, but it doesn't have a lot of music in it. and it just keeps on playing. You know, it's just
I think the original one has about four music pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's what? There's okay, so there's above ground, underground, water, and castle. Yeah, I think there's 4.
Yeah,
Do
no,
the high
There's
in the
another
sky
one.
stages?
Warp zone, and there's also the Starman. There's like the same song.
Yeah, and then
do the third stage ones have the same music as the first stage ones? I forget.
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Point is, like, you know, there's not a lot of music there, and that, you know, that just got stuck in people's head because you know, it just ground into them. A lot of NES music is like that. You know, even with later cartridges that had more varied music, it's like a lot of early video game music doesn't have an end, if you will. It's a loop.
Yeah, it's loops.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, you know, it becomes iconic through sheer force of playing. You know.
Oh yeah. There's an even worse than Bubble Bobble is the sequel, not Bubble Bobble 2, but the Rainbow Islands. Have you seen this one?
Getting into the sequel of what is the sequel of Bubble Bobble is its own shockingly nightmarish thing.
I don't understand why the Rainbow Islands has the sequel was like Bubble Bobble Part 2 or whatever written on there at all. That doesn't make any sense. It's like a totally different game with the same characters. That's
that would be why. It's because it uses the same dudes.
Yeah, that's a spin-off though. That is not a sequel.
Fair.
Right? Like calling that Bubble Bobble 2 is wrong. It's the Rainbow Islands, another story of Bubble Bobble is what they should call it. Something like that. That would make more sense.
Bubble Bobble Gaiden.
Yes,
well,
totally.
And there's also like 2 other sequels to Bubble Bobble. There's Bubble Bobble 2 on the NES.
Bubble Bobble 2. Yeah.
There's and then there's Bubble Symphony.
Yeah, which is actually
another
good.
Yeah. Like, so, like I said, Bubble Bobble should not be this chronologically confusing.
No, but the one piece of music on Rainbow Islands sounds a little bit like Somewhere Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz, but not exactly. Like just enough different, I guess, to be like not copyright infringement. And that thing distinct. Over and over again, like it's maddening.
Yes. All right. Yeah.
Also, that game is insanely difficult. That might be one of the hardest games on the Nintendo. Like, it might be harder than Battletoads.
I don't think I've ever played Rainbow Islands, at least not on the NES. Like,
throwing it out there, harder than Battletoads.
Like, bold statement. Like,
harder than Ghosts and Goblins. Like, not even close, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Ghosts and Goblins was one that I threw controllers at. Now, have you encountered
Ghosts and Goblins is one that you're fairly explicitly expected to spend a lot of time and energy memorizing and executing.
Well, that's one of the bones I have with Ghosts and Goblins, especially the later ones, is because it's like you can't memorize some of this shit because it randomizes stuff. But maybe that's more of a ghouls and ghosts problem, but it's there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. The guy that made Ghosts and Goblins was like sitting there watching playtesters and like figuring out how you can make it more cheap. It was like, I
mean, we've encountered developers who've, not necessarily done this, but have, they made things so hard because, they could master the games and they thought it was easy.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It seems easy when you're making it and you like completely know how you're putting it together.
That being said, I have gotten a developer to apologize to me for making a level that traumatized me as a kid.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm like, look, Welcome to the Machine still sucks. I stand by that. Anyway, that does beg a question. Have you encountered a game yet that is so difficult that you can't play it?
There's a couple that like I'm not sure about if I can cover it or not because of um Castle Quest. Have you seen Castle Quest before?
I
It's
want to
like,
say yes, but with a name that generic,
Yeah,
it
like,
sounds like
sounds like I heard
that's.
the name before, but then again, it's just generic enough,
I mean,
it's like a
that also
ginormous
sounds like
maze
a game we. That also sounds like a modern indie title.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a ginormous maze game thing, and like there's probably 1,000 ways you could probably complete it. A couple of them it may only take a minute, but I don't know. It just seems like that would be a big headache to try to figure out how to cover that one. Um, Games that are maybe too difficult though. Have you ever played Wizardry on NES?
No, like wizardry
Wizardry is
intimidates me.
Wizardry is extremely intimidating.
No, no, the classic PC game that I remember we had was Ultima 3. Like,
Yeah, I mean, some of these games are
trying to
tough.
yeah,
They don't
yeah.
want you to win. But the game
I mean,
Wizardry is like it's bugged on NES so that armor doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
so,
always
like,
an issue back then with games where you can't where they can't be in the era way before games could actually be patched. Is
Yeah.
So which games have like, or a lot of the games have jank mechanics. Which ones are intended and which ones are just because someone fucked up and they didn't catch it?
And this is where I bring up the joke about Ultima does nothing.
It's the reason why I can't praise Nasir Gabildi, because the coding on Final Fantasy 1 is actually fairly shoddy. Like when
Final Fantasy
how
1
much
has like several special
numerous
weapons
bugs.
that are supposed to do extra damage against a specific class of enemy. There's the Ogre Nix, there's the Man Eater, there's the Mage Masher. None of them work, they're just swords.
Yeah, there are entire stats that don't work. I don't remember, like, I want to say
that don't work.
That's in Final Fantasy VI. In Final Fantasy, at least. In Final Fantasy VI, they coded it so that instead of regular attacks being checked against evasion and magic spells being checked against magic block or magic evasion, everything was checked against magic evasion, which made it so that the evasion stat did nothing, and also the blind status did nothing. Except for make it so that old man Blue Mage can't learn spells because he can't see them.
Strago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was doing research for Final Fantasy 2 here. I mean, that's one of the things I found is just like monsters have evasion, but unless they change it during the battle, it doesn't actually do anything. And I'm not sure if that's a bug or if when they were testing the game, just like monsters having evasion made them too hard to hit and it was like not fun. And so they just kind of like blanket removed it with some kind of code. So it's hard to tell sometimes what they're how they're doing some of this stuff because the monsters have evasion stats, it just doesn't do anything.
Like, and that does lead to another question, and it's like, how do you approach these big RPGs? Like, Final Fantasy IV. It's not the biggest, like even Final Fantasy game on the Super NES, but it's still a pretty massive RPG, all things considered.
This game is very big compared to some other ones that I've covered before, but you're right. It's not even close to something like Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Super Mario RPG. Those games are even larger. And I think about like how I cover Chrono Trigger, just like how to even organize myself. When you look at just at the very beginning of that game, you go to like a fair, and all the little things that you do in the fair can trigger events later in the game, depending on how, like, do you talk to this guy? Do you not talk to this guy? Do you wait while one of the characters eats candy or whatever? Like
Yeah,
all these little things.
It all it's all over counting that stuff by like the third chapter, but that's still quite a while for stuff to come back and bite you.
Yeah, totally. So that's just so many things to even manage to let people know about and try to get a complete picture of the game and how it all works. At least Final Fantasy IV is a little bit more straightforward. So getting a good understanding of how the game systems work, how it works under the hood, like what the actual programming is doing, and how it's like handling what you do when you put the inputs in and things like that is very interesting to me. Just knowing how your stats work in conjunction to how they translate in the actual battles. And then there's a lot of things that you just wouldn't know about your weapons. They have like hidden properties and things like that, and finding out all of that stuff is interesting as well.
And how many parts do you think Final Fantasy IV here is going to be?
This is going to be 4 parts. The first part's released now. The second part is done, so that's going to be coming out on Saturday the 24th. And then part 3 I've already started working on. I'm targeting the 9th for part 3, but I have a feeling it'll probably slip to the 16th because it's just how I end up working. I have to set goals for myself that are like a little bit aggressive for me to ever get stuff done. That's just how I operate. And then the fourth part I think is going to be the easiest one to do. It's like the robot of Babil and the lunar dungeon and the ending. So I think that part's going to be easier to clean up. So I'm going to target 1 week on that to finish it. So yeah, I'm looking probably around the end of March, and I'll be done with Final Fantasy, and then we'll be back to doing other games. Try to do something a little bit more obscure. I'm going to be taking votes from my Patreon for whatever the next game will be. We do that occasionally.
And like, what are some of the games that the Patreons voted for in the past?
I think the most interesting one that they picked so far was Shadowrun on Super Nintendo, which is kind of obscure and was kind of a big game, but there was a lot in it, and it was actually very interesting, and that video performed very well. A lot of people, I think, found it interesting.
Yeah.
The what else did they voted for? They voted for Aladdin, so that was one of theirs. How we got to Aladdin on the Sega. We had Super Mario Land from Game Boy. They voted for. We've done more than that though, for sure. Yeah, lots of votes, but that helps me figure out what I'm doing sometimes because I'm planning like a lot of these very popular games. I'm doing that like research in advance so that I can do it more quickly when I actually start to play the game. But the patrons are getting me to do some of the slightly more obscure ones that need guides, so that's helping me fill in those gaps. So I like that.
Here's another question: do requests for rare games come up? Like, have you ever gotten requests for, say, Little Samson on the Nintendo Entertainment System?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've done some of them, some kind of expensive games. I've done Bucky O'Hare and nothing is quite as expensive as Samson. And Samson's actually a good game, so I should probably cover that at some point. Although I'm friends with some people that have stores and things like that. Like I have some relationships, so maybe I can. Someone can borrow me a copy or something like that if I need it.
I mean, I guess there's also repro cards. Like, I don't know if they do that for Little Samson, but you know.
Yeah, one that was really hard for me was I covered Beyond Shadowgate, which is on TurboGrafx CD, and I think it was only available through like mail order catalog. And I definitely didn't own that, and that's like something you can't just buy. Like it's not even easy to source. But I know the guy behind Shadowgate, and he owns the IP now. So he put me in contact with somebody that had the game and emailed me a copy of it to use. I did have to buy a TurboGrafx CD though. to do that episode. I didn't have one.
Well, I mean, there's a few other games that are worth doing on the TurboGrafx CD. Like East Books 1 and 2 come to mind immediately.
I do like Ease a lot.
Yeah, and like the East games on the Turbo CD are generally considered to be the definitive versions of those versions.
I liked Ease 3 on the TurboGrafx CD a lot. It added a lot compared to the other versions that I saw. There was like CD quality, audio, voice acting. The graphics are better.
Like
that game is awesome too. Ease 3 is sweet.
It is
really good on Turbo CD.
Like, granted, I played the Super NES version, which doesn't have the
fine.
Yeah, it doesn't have the audiovisual flair of the TG16 CD version, but that would be to be expected.
For obvious data storage medium reasons.
East purists hate it because it's the side view East game, but that's neither here nor there.
I kind of like it. How do you feel about the bump attacking Ease games?
I surprisingly didn't hate it.
It's all right. It's like counterintuitive a little bit, though.
It is.
Takes some getting used to.
Yeah, it's but not enormously so. I think it's helped that I've played East 1 and 2 a bunch of times now.
Yeah. Is it 4 that's also bump attack?
It might depend on the version of 4.
Mask of the Sun or whatever. Is that what it is?
There's 2 versions of 4. Honestly, Mac would know more about that particular title. It's East 5.
East is good though.
Yeah, East 5 that is very Zelda-like and almost killed the franchise.
Yeah, I don't think I played that one.
Well, East. Yeah, East 5 only stayed in Japan, and I don't think it's ever been re-released outside the Super Nintendo. It's not popular.
I definitely played 4 on Super Nintendo. It was like a Japanese cartridge, so I played that one in Japanese. I think it was Mask of the Sun, but I'm not sure. I guess there is 2 versions, you're right.
Yeah, Mask of the Sun would be the one that's not on TG16.
It was definitely a Super Nintendo version.
Yeah.
Super Famicom.
Or the way it worked is Falcom made their own version and Hudson made a version of East 4. If I'm remembering correctly.
That sounds correct.
Yeah. Anyway, that does beg a question. Is there a limit to your retro system? Would you ever do a PlayStation game or a Saturn game?
Yeah, maybe. Right now, I don't think I'm quite there. I'm just doing Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Genesis, TurboGrafx, and Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. Well, I don't know if I've done Game Boy Advance yet. I don't think so, but I would do it. But I think that we will eventually get to PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64 before we're done here.
I mean, technically speaking, PS3 is nearing the point of retro at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I played a lot of games in the PS2 era as well, but I don't know if we'll ever get past PS1. There's just so much.
I mean, and even advancing to the PlayStation 1 era is a order of magnitude.
Yes.
More often than not. I won't say every game experienced a, inflation of, let's say, game. But, it definitely, games definitely got longer on the whole, once they went to 3D.
Yeah, there's a lot of long games on PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
Even the good 2D games on the PlayStation, of which there's a handful, but those games are super long. Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, the Alundra games. And those kind of a lot of the RPGs on the PlayStation are enormous.
I mean, even something like Kelowna or Tomba, those are lengthy as well.
Yeah, and well, PlayStation also has all these like find 9,000 thing kind of games.
Mhm.
Right.
They love that stuff in this like early 3D era. Nintendo 64 is notorious for that too. Like, all right, you're gonna need to find 700 objects. Yeah,
Well, I mean, that's kind of one of the first things they figure out how to do well with 3D games.
yeah, turn it into just like giant Pac-Man with everything, the dots spread across everywhere.
Yeah. Anyway, shifting a bit, I want to tackle an aspect that we haven't about your videos, and that's I know this is going to sound weird, but the guide part of the guide. And that is, like, if you haven't seen one of his videos yet, especially the modern videos, it's not just a playthrough with footage, like you'd find on, say, the Nintendo Complete or the World of Long Plays channel. It's also got a bunch of information on the side detailing like either enemies, items, map. And I'm wondering, what's the creation process behind all that?
I make all that stuff on Photoshop, and it takes a really long time. Just a really long time, man. So much time is spent on making all that side graphics. Yeah, the map slides, the enemy information, the little tips, all that stuff. Yeah, that's all generated by me. I make it myself from scratch.
Like, yeah, that's just what I've seen. That looks extensive.
It's a lot of work, but I'm not gonna lie to you though. I kind of enjoy making that stuff. I like put on music or TV or whatever, and just kind of get into art mode and just start making stuff.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like,
Yeah.
Now, how to approach this? What about the times when you've gotten it wrong? Like, because I'm sure mistakes have come up in one fashion or another. Do they get caught by the community?
I mean, they do. Yeah, there's a couple things. There's a game called Clash of Demon Head. And Clash of Demon Head. I guess I just didn't have enough time to research it because there was two things that I kind of missed in there, and I did do a follow up episode where I showed those things, and it was like a bonus episode in 2021 where I followed up on stuff like there are very few things I would say that I get like outright wrong because I try to be able to execute everything, so I'm like checking stuff. But yeah, a handful of things get through here and there. I made a graphic wrong in the Rygar video. I just like put the wrong text in. For one item, like I just repeated it twice. So yeah, I mean, like those kind of things here and there. But I try to watch it back, and I'm pretty anal retentive about preventing some stuff like that. But yeah, little things slip through here and there. And the bigger thing for me though is just stuff that I wish I would have covered that I just did not cover. Right? Like if I find out about something about a game that just I didn't get into my video, that's the kind of thing that I wish I would have had that or something.
Do any examples come to mind?
Oh, they're in DuckTales for the NES. There's a room that doesn't appear on the map that Nintendo Power put out. I just didn't know it was there. Yeah. And so I hit every other treasure in the entire game and missed this one small room. But yeah, I just didn't know it was there. It's like a hidden room. Yeah, but I covered that also in the bonus episode as well. It's just wow, I can't believe that wasn't on the map. They must have added it late.
Probably. I suppose that's although sometimes Nintendo Power just poorly copied their screenshots, like their Final Fantasy One guide, the Air Tower. It's actually really bad because they got the spacing wrong on a pretty monumental level. Like it's like one space over to everything, so it's really inaccurate.
In that Final Fantasy guide, there's like one enemy whose picture's upside down. There's like a couple of errors in there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's less than surprising that they would make it like it could have been not there. They could have just not have put it in for whatever reason. I can attribute that to human error as well. Like,
So,
anyway, so I also wanted to ask you about your dog.
oh yeah, I have two dogs, Kylo and Mance.
Yeah, they're both golden labs.
Yeah, golden retrievers.
Yeah, like, what made you want to like? Is it Kylo?
Kylo, yeah, he's the older dog.
Yeah, like, what made you put him as the intro? He's the thing that you see in the intros and on a lot of the merch.
Yeah, he's like the mascot of the channel in a lot of ways. So when I started out with the very first couple episodes that I was just making, I made some conscious decisions about the direction of the channel pretty early on. Like it's called "You Can Beat Video Games," right? So it's not about me, and I didn't want it to be about me at all. I wanted it to be about the player, about other people learning how to play these games, but I didn't really want it to be about me, the host. But at the same time, the videos need to have some kind of personality to them. So my brother suggested that I use like a puppet or something, and I was like, I don't know how that would play. But I put the like headset on the dog, and it looked real cute. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go with this. And it's just it's kind of how it came up. But the dogs are very popular.
I mean, they're dogs, so it makes sense. Like,
Yeah, people like dogs.
yeah, I'm like, and the intro is fairly short, with the Mario Paint stuff.
Yeah.
Just make a question: would you ever do a You Can Beat video games on Mario Paint?
Like covering the Fly Swatter game or something. Yeah. Or and like just to get the historical information, maybe.
Hmm.
I
That
could
would
see
be
it.
interesting.
Yeah, I feel like people would watch it. It'd probably be a short one, like one that'd be easy for me to do between longer videos.
It's an idea. Like,
Mario Paint's super popular game. Pretty cool idea from Nintendo to like include a mouse.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I guess my final question is: are you on the hunt for some other retro system of the age, like say a Master System?
Man, what would I like to get if I could get something like really crazy? Maybe I don't know. Growing up, I always thought Neo Geo was pretty cool as far as things that I don't own. I would love to have a Master System. I've looked at buying a Master System. I'm not sure what I think the best solution for that is because there's a couple different ways that you can get like an actual Master System, but I'm not sure about the outputs on it. You can get the mod for the Genesis, but it only works on the SG1 model,
Right.
which is annoying. Because I don't have that one, so I'd have to buy another Genesis just to play Master System power-based games on.
I think there's
But there's some cool Master System games that I'd like to cover. I mean, the first Phantasy Star comes to mind right away. Psycho Fox.
Golvelius.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah,
they would be cool.
The Master System has an underrated library, in spite of the presence of Alex Kidd.
Yeah, it was popular in some other countries. where NES didn't have the same kind of penetration. And I mean,
Europe
Master
and
System,
Brazil.
it's a good system. It just it didn't have the kind of following that Nintendo had because they had such a stranglehold on the developers.
Yeah. I mean, some of it was market share, but like Nintendo legitimately strangled out the Master System because they had actual contracts with third parties that said, if you make games with us, you cannot put them on the
They
Sega
won't be on
Master
Master
System
System.
for like 2 years. Like,
Yeah.
and one of the ways that they got around that was the Master System got a lot of arcade ports that were reprogrammed by Sega themselves.
Right. I mean, well, Sega was a really big arcade developer at the time, so that was their big strength, putting out games like Afterburner or whatever, Space Harrier.
Yep. The
Outrun.
the Master System version of Space Harrier tried.
Yeah.
It tried, but you weren't really doing that game any justice on an 8-bit system. Like,
yeah, you got Space Harrier 2 on the Genesis.
even that, like,
Right.
like, it wasn't really until like the 32X where they could really do that properly. Like, that's how far ahead the Superscaler was in terms of technology.
432X didn't get a chance.
I owned a 32X. It died the death it deserved. Like,
how many games were released for that? Like 6?
40. 40, which is more than I think people think it has, but it's still not a sign of a successful system or add-on.
No.
It's like, I know people like to bag on the Sega CD, but that has like some
Sega
200
CDs are right.
games. Yeah.
There's a couple games. I mean, I don't know about interactive movies or whatever. I mean, they just kept trying that, and I'm not sure if that was what makes a good game. But there's games that aren't that on the Sega CD that are pretty cool.
Well, it was the FMV games were markedly worse on the Sega CD because that's where the limitations of the Genesis really hit the fan, especially like the lack of color.
They're grainy too, and then like the video is always in some tiny, small screen.
Yeah, like FMV games just look better on, say, the 3DO versus the Sega CD. Like, anyway, as fun as this all is, we are drawing low on time, so I want to see if my colleagues here have any further questions for you.
Yeah, I'm good.
I think I've popped in when I had something to say.
You awake over there, Petty?
Oh boy. Yeah, I heard him a little earlier. Oh boy.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was fantastic having you on the program. We're going to shift to our next segment.
Awesome.
As usually we talk about entertainment news, but this week we're talking about video games because there's a lot to talk about this week, or rather just today. Today it seems like everyone had video game news to share. Like, it was probably a coincidence on that note. Everyone, as I understand it, a whole bunch of stuff got delayed because of Microsoft's announcement last week. Like, and also that tied into today because even though we've known that Microsoft has been going, let's say, quasi third party for a while now, they also announced the they're bringing 4 titles to the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5 last week. just like immediately the titles got leaked.
Well, and
What was
or.
Well, we didn't know the and/or part. To be fair, like we just got the 4 titles. Like, it was today where we got the detailed on those titles. Like, indeed, the Nintendo Partner Direct opened up with one of those titles. I think everyone was expecting, say, Hi-Fi Rush to open up the Partner Direct, but no, it was grounded. Like, in fact, turns out, Hi-Fi Rush is not coming to the Nintendo Switch. Like, and I think I can definitively state that because, at least like anytime soon, because Microsoft and Sony did put out what was coming out to the PlayStation 5, and it's all 4 games, and what's coming out to the Nintendo Switch. Like, Nintendo had nothing on Hi-Fi Rush and nothing on Sea of Thieves.
That's disappointing.
Like, I suppose, but it's also not surprising because, Hi-Fi Rush and like Hi-Fi Rush is a proper current gen game. Like, it's made for the Xbox Series X and S. It's not an Xbox One game that's being upscaled or anything like that.
Yeah, I guess it would need like significant downporting to be good.
Yeah. And Sea of Thieves, while it is an Xbox One game, it's also a very, very big live service open world title.
I didn't expect Sea of Thieves. I did expect Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah,
but if they do Hi-Fi Rush, maybe they need a little bit more time in the oven in terms of making it play well.
Well,
Maybe?
it's also suspected that it might be coming to the Switch too.
That's also possibly, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what Nintendo's getting, it's getting Grounded and Pentiment. Like,
Grounded, I don't recall being one of the 4 that was discussed.
Some people were discussing it. It wasn't like, it's also not a very big game.
Yeah, Grounded and Pentiment, they're a couple of Microsoft's mid-carders. Like, look, I understand Pentiment is a fantastic title, but nobody would position this as a main event selling title.
Oh yeah.
But, I mean, look, even in the Nintendo Direct, Grounded got the opening slot, one of the most important positions in one of these dealies. Pentiment, it got mentioned in the sizzle reel. It's like that kind of placement tells you the hierarchy of things.
There's not a ton to say about Pentiment that hasn't been said anyway.
Yeah. Once again, that's not a statement on the actual quality of Pentiment. That's a statement on where Nintendo and Microsoft see Pentiment in terms of, selling.
Well, with Grounded, they openly said there was crossplay with it. Nintendo usually acts like the other systems do not exist.
Yeah. And once again, Grounded was in the opening slot. It took a headlining position. Like, it's like first slot, last slot, couple of the middle slots. Those are going to be your big time position. Like an example in the middle, Disney's Epic Mickey rebrushed.
Finally escaping Wii jail.
Right. The problem with Nintendo Directs and any state of plays, and I've mentioned this before, and I will continually mention, is when a game gets revealed at one of these, you will never know the platforms until unless they say console exclusive, until after the conference and the proper trailer comes out.
Yeah,
for
just
example,
because they're the ones who reveal it doesn't mean it's only theirs.
Right.
Yeah. For example, Epic Mickey Rebrushed, even though it got announced for the Nintendo Switch, as a Nintendo Switch title, it's coming to everything. PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC. Interestingly enough, Steam will be the only place you can get both Epic Mickey titles then. Like, I'm not even joking.
No, I just find it hilarious.
Yeah. Like, it's also, the other thing is, it's going to be interesting to see how this shapes up, because Epic Mickey made extensive use of the Wii pointers.
Mm-hmm. Which at least can be emulated with the Switch, kind of, if you're using the regular Switch Joy-Cons.
Right.
I guess kind of the PlayStation family, you can at least use the touchpad, but for the Xbox, big yikes.
Yeah. Yeah. So still, it's a big remake coming from, of all companies, THQ Nordic and Purple Lamp, aka the team that did the remastering on SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom, of which we reviewed on the Fragments of Silicon show a few years back.
Indeed.
Yeah. Anyway, so the big ending capper was something I protest being here, and that is Endless Ocean Luminous. This is not a partner title. This is a Nintendo title. Look, I know Eureka develops it, but Nintendo not only publishes the game, they own the IP.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Nintendo game. It's, it's not internally developed, I'll give you that, but it's still something that Nintendo's publishing.
It's still basically second party.
Yeah. So it should not be here. But regardless, it is here. And has anyone here ever played an Endless Ocean game?
I've rented the first one. It's kind of cool. Depending on how much this one is, I may give it a shot.
$50.
Yeah. I might wait for a sale.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie, I was somewhat surprised that the last game wasn't actually Elden Ring on the Switch, as some people were suggesting it might be.
Okay, that was never happening.
Basically, yeah.
We haven't even gotten like Dark Souls 2 on the
I know, and
Switch.
that also probably would have needed to be downported. It was just funny because I'm sure you'll get to this, but Elden Ring had an announcement like immediately after the Direct.
Not I would mention in passing.
It's only more interesting for Elden Ring fans, not people who aren't Elden Ring fans.
Yeah, the first paid DLC is coming. Like,
hooray!
No, it's just funny that it was announced. A lot of people were saying, "Well, the Elden Ring has an announcement coming in like literally an hour after the Nintendo Direct." Well, we know it's coming to the Switch then.
Mm.
Yeah.
Egg on your face, homies.
In various degrees of seriousness.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the big selling point of this Endless Ocean game is, first of all, I was legitimately surprised. It's not a remake. It's not a remaster. It's an original title. I'm like, Nintendo actually went out and said, you know what, we're going to build an original Endless Ocean game for the Switch. I'm like, I totally would have expected that they would have put the first two Wii games into a package and called it a day.
There was a second one?
Yeah, there's an Endless Ocean 2.
Huh. The more
you're
know.
Learning things.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, anyway, so aside from that, this is a multiplayer title.
Mm-hmm.
You can dive in with up to 30 players online. I wish them luck because honestly, the game did not look good.
Yeah, I hope that's like an early, relatively early build that they're using there. Else, yikes.
Like, I was shocked at how bad it looked.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, hopefully that gets a better
From what I
showing.
remember playing of Endless Ocean, like, not sure why you'd want to play that with 30 people is what it said it held up to.
Yeah, up to 30 people.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that's gonna work, but you do you, Nintendo.
Yeah. Anyway, in other remake news, Monster Hunter Stories 1 is leaping off the Nintendo 3DS and onto the Nintendo Switch. With new HD visuals, new voiceovers, a museum mode filled with art and music from the game, and additional content that was only previously available in Japan.
I wonder if they'll reprint the amiibos for it.
They're actually pretty good about doing that, so possibly.
Yeah. Let me see. Another big heavy hitter here was Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble.
This is like the first time II's gotten a redo, hasn't he?
Well, yeah, here's the thing. It's another new game.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly because they've ran out of Super Monkey Ball games to remake.
Yeah.
Seriously, they did the first two games. They did Banana Blitz. What was left?
That one iPhone game that was god awful.
Yeah, it was like, okay, let's do Step and Roll. That was made for the Wii Balance. Yeah, the one that was made for the Wii Balance board. Or Super Monkey Ball Junior Touch. The portable versions that were pretty not good. Or God help us, Adventure. The Super Monkey Ball platformer.
Oh, good lord, that was a thing.
Yeah. That's a kind way of putting it. Now, the thing that we haven't gotten answered is what they're doing with Monkey Target.
Okay.
Because if you remember, they fucked up Monkey Target last time.
Yeah, they did.
So, look, there are people who really want to know if Monkey Target's going to be good this time. I guess we'll find out. Also, worth noting, this is a actual console exclusive to the Nintendo Switch. I think that means it is coming to Steam. Oh yes, big Nintendo Switch Online dump today.
I'm wondering if some of this is also part of the Microsoft agreement, because they dumped like 5 Rare games.
Yes. Rare has delivered unto the Nintendo Switch Online Killer Instinct, Battletoads in Battle Maniacs, for the both for the Super Nintendo. And Battletoads in Battle Maniacs is a really interesting one because that's not in Rare Replay. The others are.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the first time Battletoads and Battle Maniacs has been re-released. Bit of a coup there. For the NES, Snake Rattle and Roll and RC Pro-Am. Worth noting, our guest this week has done a guide for Snake Rattle and Roll. So if you want to learn how to do the game, just go and watch that.
Get a turbo controller, because that game's insanely hard.
Do they make those for the Nintendo Switch?
I don't know. If you might, if they probably do third party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like Snake Rattle and Roll is on the Switch now. And finally, Blast Core for the Nintendo 64.
Which I have heard is quite interesting. I'd always wanted to play on the N64, but never actually got.
Well,
no, you have you have the opportunity to do so
for only $25 a month.
I'm like,
I mean, better than trying to track down a cartridge.
That's
Yeah.
true.
And you don't have an Xbox, so you can't just go and buy Rare Replay.
That's right.
This is probably the cheapest option that doesn't
Oh no,
involve...
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just I'm still have reservations about upgrading on that, especially if
No,
I don't use it that often.
I get that. I'm just saying, that's probably the easiest option for you. Right. Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance has been announced.
It's going to be the usual Shin Megami Tensei game upgrade with new demons and quality of life shit, but also this version is not going to be just on the Switch apparently. So
yeah, it's
that's
coming to it's coming to consoles that have the power to actually run the game.
Also, I read a hilarious thing that I don't know if is true about the save bonus not being that you can like transfer anything significant, like you can't like save your progress or anything from the base game to Vengeance, but there'll be an option if you have a save file from Vengeance to import 3 demons from your compendium.
That
which
sounds
is
terrible.
Not much.
Especially because it's a Shin Megami Tensei game. You're usually going to have a fuck ton of demons.
Yeah.
I mean, you could theoretically start the game with some good ones that way.
You could start your game with some ultimate level demons, but like...
But yeah, no, it's kind of a hilariously small thing, if that is in fact the case.
Anyway, also announced the Star Wars Battlefront Classics Collection coming March 12th. It's combining the first 2 Battlefront games from the PlayStation 2 era. It does look like they're using the PC version because the online battles is going to be up to 64 player. That's the player count you got on the PC. Mm-hmm. The consoles, if I'm remembering, I think it was like 32 on the Xbox and like 16 on the PlayStation 2.
Flip that, I think.
No. It would have been... No, Xbox was more powerful than that.
Maybe, but I remember it was a long time before they relieved the 16 player multiplayer cap, I think. I don't remember off the top of my head. It could be... You could be right. I could be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like... I'm not sure myself, but... Anyway, like I said... A bunch of indie games got announced or shadow dropped, like Penny's Big Breakaway, which is being hyped up as the next big project from the at least some of the people who did Sonic Mania.
I want to give that a shot, but that involves having money.
Yeah. World of Goo 2 got announced.
I keep forgetting there was a second World of Goo game.
Well, no, it just got announced.
Fair.
Like, that's coming on the Nintendo Switch May 23rd. And World of Goo is 15 years old now.
Yeah, I remember playing that back in high school.
Yeah, I'm like, it's one of those Memento Mori things. Pepper Grinder showed up. Which is a game that looked like, with a drill. Like, it reminded me of Drill Dozer a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, that when I was looking at that, I was wondering if it had any relation to Drill Dozer or if they just convergently developed running around with a drill. It did look interesting. That's one of the ones that I put down as like a keep an eye on this thing. Apparently there's a demo available or something.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, there's more stuff here, but it's kind of going down in importance. I just don't want to talk about the next Sword Art Online game.
Yeah.
There's another Gundam Breaker game, and this one might not suck.
Yeah, and this one's actually coming over. We didn't get Gundam Breaker 3, if I'm remembering correctly.
Right, we didn't get 3, and we did get New Gundam Breaker, which sucked. Spin-off of Ender Lilies, which I've heard some people being excited about.
Yeah. We're getting a Nintendo Switch version of Kingdom Come Deliverance. Like I said, it's just, bigger news here is we're getting a new Fantasy Life game.
Oh, is it
new?
I thought it was a re-release.
No, it's a new chapter of Fantasy Life. I said, I think that really does state how many remakes we're getting these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I'm like, wait, that's a new game?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, at South Park Snow Day got a lot of attention for whatever reason. I'm not anticipating good things with this.
I vaguely remember
Anyway, like I said,
the Snow Day being okay at best. It wasn't as good as Stick of Truth, but it was at least okay.
Anyway, I want to close out on the limited run game stuff.
Oh, I was going to mention that Nintendo screwed us again. Mother 3 is coming to NSO in Japan.
Well,
It's not hard to get that if you have a Japanese network account and any account that has the thing.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to get that, but it's like...
The thing is, there is no official translation of it. There's a fan translation that they haven't, like... That even if they have the rights to use because they were, like, volunteered it, they haven't accepted that.
Right.
So they would have to they would have had to either purchase or accept that translation or do their own, which is more work than they feel like doing for Switch Online.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, we're not getting Mother 3 anytime soon. If we get it at all, they'd have to actually translate the game. They never did that. And Mother 3 is a proper JRPG with a lot of complicated things going on in it.
Mm-hmm. Also, lots of puns.
Like, anyway, so yeah, other things that happened. Digital Eclipse announced the release date for Llama Soft Minter Story. Maybe more on that for Fragments. Definitely more on the other show is going to be limited run games. We do have them slated for mid-March. But they revealed their third Konami collaboration in Ninja 5.0, which I was very pleased to see. Ninja 5.0 is not a game I've actually played, but I've heard about for about 20 years now. It's one of the ultimate cult games on the Game Boy Advance. If you're a fan of like Bionic Commando or God, I'm trying to remember me too, like Kawase or however you pronounce it.
Mihara Kawase?
Yeah, that's the one. You know, games with a grappling hook. It's one of
Yumi's Odd Odyssey. It has a dub title.
Right, but they don't use that anymore. Like, anyway, Ninja 5.0 is coming alongside Rocket Knight Adventures, the complete package. You know, they're going to have both Genesis games and the Super NES title in the Sparkster pack.
Oh, is that what Resparked is? It's a collection, not a new game?
Yep.
Well, that's still not bad.
Yeah. Because this is the first time that the Sparkster games have gotten re-released.
That's another set of games I always wanted to try, so maybe I'll grab that.
Not included is the very bland Xbox 360 title.
Oh yeah, that's not retro enough. Also, no one's missing it.
I have it. I wish I didn't.
Yeah, you can still get that on Steam if you really want to play it.
Really? And how hard is it to not mess up giving a possum a jetpack and a sword?
You'd be surprised.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
Like, also, this is releasing alongside the Felix the Cat collection. Apparently, this is a personal favorite of, like, the head of Digital Eclipse. Like, that would explain everything here, because I'm like...
Boss gets what boss wants.
Felix the Cat is an interesting intellectual property from an earlier age of cartoons mostly.
Oh, we do not have the bandwidth to get into that. Because
put a pin in
I'm
that
like,
for like a week. We don't actually have a topic.
because I'm like, Felix the Cat. First of all, this game is based off the 1960s television series, like, which is its whole other boat of things. Like, this is where the magic bag and the professor and Poindexter come from. Once again, it's one of those games that got, weird time to see, because there wasn't. It was before any sort of Felix the Cat property was active. It was before the movie and before the Twisted Tales of Felix the Cat, which is why they had to base it off the 60s television series. Like, so this is combining the NES and Game Boy titles together. So, hooray for that! From what I
NES
understand,
game's all right. If you haven't played it, it's super easy. Like, you could easily beat it in one sitting, and it's a good one if you want to get like little kids into retro games. You can put them in front of that; they can probably like build up a little bit of confidence.
Yeah,
super,
it's a solid
super easy. It looks nice. It plays good, but yeah, very easy.
Yeah, it's one of Hudson's better efforts. Like, and I think the Game Boy version lines up, but I'm not sure.
I haven't played the Game Boy one, not gonna lie.
Like, well, I mean, there'll be the opportunity to do so soon.
Whew.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, a lot of stuff happened today. Anyway, before we depart, Kevin, is there any topic you wish to cover this week?
Honestly, I think we can wait for stuff for next week. Honestly,
Okay.
1:20, so figure we probably want to head on out of here.
Yeah, about ready to wrap it up. Anyway, so good news. We did hear from Mac. I'm like, he is alive. Turns out he just fell asleep and his alarm didn't go off. So, he says he's having a rougher go at it than he thought he was, which is understandable, all things considered. Anyway, so coming up next week, we'll be welcoming Tyler Osborne to the program. He is a voice actor and a second unit director on some projects. He's fairly new to the business or businessness, but he's got a few credits like Red Mad Venture, Tanissa, the visual novel, the Mandela Catalog, and Cabin Tales.
Ooh.
Which he's also served as an assistant director on. So that is coming next week. And until then, stay safe, everybody.